Recently, I received a query from a journalist asking about what are organizational strategies that people have heard of, but it might actually backfire and clutter up your space. So, I'm not talking about organizational strategies as in a whole company. We're talking about actual strategies for dealing with your physical objects. Because, after all, if you are working in a cluttered workspace or you have a cluttered home environment, not that things have to be perfect, but if it's so cluttered that you can't find what you need when you need it, well, that affects your time management. So, three strategies that I shared with the journalist are label makers, lids, and folding or rolling clothing. So, as far as label makers go, label makers are awesome because they make a space look so crisp and clean. You may not have labels on outsides of cabinets for, say, office supplies, but inside a cabinet, you can have the labels in there. Or what I've seen some people do for those who are still paper focused, they will have all of their file folders with very neat labels made from label makers. The problem, though, with label makers is that once you're done with a major organizing project and you put that label maker away, usually something else comes into the picture. Maybe it's a few weeks later, it could be a few months, and you realize, oh, this is something new and it needs to be labeled. Problem, that same exact labeling may not be available because the label maker's dead or you don't have that type of label ribbon anymore. So don't be afraid to, number one, use a different label maker, or number two, just handwrite something. But what tends to happen is that people who want everything just visually perfect, they stall out and will not deal with the new objects that have come into the space. And therefore, not having a label maker actually creates more clutter because they don't want something that looks different or is handwritten. So consider from the very beginning not using a label maker or giving yourself permission to have different styles of labels just so you can keep that organized space. That second organizational strategy that could backfire is using a lid on a container. If this is a container that is going to hold daily office supplies, like maybe you use paper clips all the time, if you keep a lid on that container, it is less likely you will have easy access to it. And even worse, when you're done with that pile of paper clips and it's time to put them back in the container, if there's a lid on it, it tends to stay as a pile. Because we are so busy, it takes a lot of time to use two hands to open up a container and get that lid off and then back on again. And the piles just tend to build up. So if you use a container for daily items you need to reach into or put back, consider not using a lid. And then the third organizational strategy actually has to do with your home life, unless, of course, you keep clothes at the office, because that has to deal with keeping a drawer full of neatly rolled clothes or perfectly folded clothes. This became all the rage a while back when a particular book came out, and it does look gorgeous and it's pretty awesome. But here's the thing, I work with people who don't have a whole lot of extra time. We're trying to make their lives as efficient as possible. And lower on the list of making things more efficient is spending even more time to have these perfect looking drawers. Now, if you are not currently employed and you don't need to work, you don't need to be actively searching for a job, then you might have this extra time to do those perfect folds or make the perfect rolls. 8. Remember, if you are watching time management videos because you don't have a whole lot of time, then don't worry about having these perfect looking drawers with neat rolls or neat folds, because it does take time to not only do it the first time, but to keep doing it over time. And this is where another downfall can come in, because people set up the system and then they feel like a failure when they can't maintain it. So give yourself permission to not have these perfect looking show ready drawers. And that is why it can be an organizational strategy to backfire. So Don't feel compelled to use label makers when you're getting organized. Don't feel compelled to use lids on every single container that you have. And don't feel compelled to have these perfect clothing drawers just so you feel like you have what it looks like in a magazine. All of these can backfire for you when you don't have time to maintain those systems. So there you go. Not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but I do want to make sure you are being realistic about how you use your time.